So here we will be placing some rocks on here now. Gotta make sure your liner's in nice and tight against the side. And basically we'll take these rocks and kind of got to find a position for them, but you can put them in like this, and then what will happen is you can see one of our guys here is actually putting in the mortar mix in between the stones, and this will help to keep the stones in place. So in case we have any earthquakes or anything like that, the stones will not roll into the pond. And after that's all dried up, it becomes really solid. You notice that we kind of space the big rocks apart from the little rocks, and there's a reason for that. We do that so that it looks like a more natural, has a more natural appearance. A lot of times people tend to make ponds and it looks like a brick wall. If you mix your rocks, small, large, mediums, then it gives it a more natural appearance. And so what we do is we actually take and place different size stones in between, and then we'll put in the mortar in between these cracks and fissures here.
Louder.
Here you can see we built the waterfall, Jim, and you can see that we have 3 different levels to the waterfall. And this creates a nice sheeting effect as the water returning from the filter goes over these plates. It'll give you a nice sheet of water that just comes right down. And basically what we did to build this waterfall, right behind here, you can kind of see the blocks that we use, the concrete blocks. And this we built up to use it to build up the waterfall and the steps that are involved in it. And later on what we did is we actually took the liner, and the liner actually goes right up to the back wall, up and over the back wall. This will give you a good barrier in case there's any leakage from the waterfall. You can see that the liner has been hidden, folded back, and hidden behind some of the rocks here. And it comes through here, and you can see that here we still haven't finished with it. But basically what we do is we tuck it like this, and tuck it down, and then we kind of put it like this, and then we'll fill in with mortar in between here. Now, one of the good things about doing this, let's say you built your waterfall, and all of a sudden you find out you have a leak. Well, you can come back, break the cement, and you can actually fix the liner so that you can get your liner up above your water line. And so that way you prevent any leakage problems.
It's now a couple of days later, and we've begun to fill the pond with water. As Danny gets the water pump wired up so that we can turn the filter system and the waterfall on, let's take a moment and look at how the rocks interface with the pond water. This is the area that Danny referred to many times before as the step. You can see here how the rocks appear to be half submerged, and you really cannot see the pond liner at all other than what's below the water level. So this turned out really quite attractive. And here's a step that may be all too common with most pond owners, but certainly every pond owner in the very beginning has to prime the water pump.
Essentially, prime the whole filter.
Pretty cool, huh? What do you think of that sunlight as it flickers across the surface of the pond?
You need to do something. Go ahead.
And now that the pond is up and running, let's take a look at a few of the components within the pond system itself. Starting first with the infamous surface skimmer. This is at the opposing end of the waterfall, and this is going to collect the big particles.
Here we have our skimmer. As you can see, it's full of water, and you can see the way this weir goes back and forth. When the pump is in operation, this weir will open up as the water is being sucked through, and actually here you can see the product of its work. You have the first defense, which is the netting. This will catch all the big particles out of the system. And as we had talked about before, we have a particulate filter, which is this one here, and this will catch the smaller grains. Now there are even smaller grains that'll end up in our bead filter up above, and that bead filter, when we want to clean it, we just backwash it and get rid of all that fine particulate matter. You can see here too, we have this cover kind of keeps dirt and things out of the filter, and in this case we've actually cut out a piece of flagstone that'll sit right on top of it and hide the whole thing.
Very nice. And that has a line that runs out of it that goes back to the filter system?
Yes, it does. That line comes out on this end of the skimmer and goes all the way back into the filter up above.
And now that we're completing the structural end of the pond,
Just bring them all over where I'm going to put them.
we can start working on some of the smaller detail or niceties within the pond itself.
Well, here, Jim, we have our underwater lights. These particular lights have a fake rock around the lights, and these rocks actually help to keep the rock, this particular light and rock, in place inside the pond. And these are meant to be underwater. If you put them outside of the water for any reason, they do heat up quite a bit, and they'll eventually wear out the gaskets that are contained within this housing here. So we're going to set this light up into the pond here, and you can see that we've dug a small trench around the pond, and this is where our wiring is going to go. You just want to remember about those wires when you're digging and putting your landscape plants in. So just remember where they are.
And it's just under the water's surface, as opposed to at the bottom of the pond?
Yeah, well, in this case, we're setting them up this way because this particular light will actually be lighting the water as it comes down from the waterfall in this direction. And then we have two other lights located right here that will be lighting up the middle of the pond, and another one that's pointing in this direction, lighting this other section of the pond over by the skimmer here. Down in the bottom here, you can see the 1 1/2 inch flex PVC pipe, which comes from underneath the waterfall. In this case, we use black flex PVC, so that it becomes more blended into the whole system. And you can see we've also added a check valve down here. The reason for the check valve is so that our filter will not lose prime when the system is shut down for any reason. So essentially what happens, all that water that's in that line stays within the filter and the pump, and you do not lose that circuit of water going through. You also notice that we've drilled holes into the pipe, and of course that's where our water is going into this pipe. And we normally use a long pipe like this to distribute the suction. That way, if part of the return happens to become stuffed up with leaves or any pond debris, at least you have other sections of the pipe which are essentially bringing water to the pump. Now, Jim, we've decided to put an exhaust port on the waterfall. In this case, because sometimes neighbors may complain about nighttime noise of the waterfall. So in this case, we've added a valve which will divert water from the waterfall and come out through this port right down here that's in the cement. So it's an added feature, and that'll keep the pond running, the filter running, which is also doing biological filtration, and you don't want to turn that off for any long period of time. So essentially you're oxygenating the pond and the bacteria, the beneficial bacteria which are in the filter.
So those are the basic suction and return aspects of the pond. Let's take a look at the filter system in operation.
Well, the first thing that happens here is that essentially we have our two return lines. This particular line here comes from the skimmer box, so this valve here controls the skimmer. This one here controls the bottom drain on the pond. So you can essentially throttle these valves back and forth to give you the desired effect in the pond. If you want more skimming off the bottom, say you're cleaning the pond, you would go ahead and close the skimmer valve, and you would get more suction down at the bottom. If you wanted to do vice versa, you have a lot of leaf litter on the top, you would close the bottom drain and then open the skimmer box all the way, and that'll essentially clean out the whole top of the pond literally within a few minutes. Now, as our water circulates through, you'll notice that our pump has a strainer basket inside of it, and this strainer basket happens to catch any large particles so it doesn't damage the impeller of the pump. Sometimes rather large rocks can get through and chip an impeller, and essentially what happens then is that you're not running at the full potential of the pump.
So this pond really looks exciting, Danny. First of all, thank you very much for having us involved. What do you foresee as far as plants or fish inside here?
Well, essentially what the owner is going to be doing is he's going to be bringing in some low-growing flower-type plants all along the outer edge here, and probably some reeds and things like papyrus and those type of plants up towards the back to kind of soften up all the hardscape that we have here. So you know, and then over in this area, he's decided to put in some stones that you can actually walk on, like a path, some flagstone there. So,
and any aquatic plants?
Yeah, he plans to have water lilies and probably some other types of plants like irises and things that would jut out of the water.
And what about fish? I'm assuming koi fish?
Strictly koi's, yes.
And do they bother the plants?
Some of them do. Sometimes you get lucky and they'll leave them alone, but mainly they'll eat them.
So it's a fish attitude thing? And
but basically he's going to try it.
So the fish do bother the plants?
They do bother some plants, yes.
Great. Well, Dan, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Tina,
Jim.
thank you very much. It's been great. The pond is beautiful.
Thank you, Jim.
You need to do something. Go ahead.